The wedding ring I found in his coat pocket. I found the ring by accident, which is how people tell on themselves. It had fallen into the lining of his coat. I felt it when I reached for my keys, a thin shock against my knuckles like a coin that had learned shame. The gold was warm from my palm in an intimate way that didn't belong to me. Inside the band was an inscription that wasn't our date. Marcus doesn't wear rings. He hangs exhibitions for a living. He says jewelry catches on frames. And when he touches art, he removes everything that could pretend to be a second intention. We have been together 6 years. We keep the good bowls within reach. We have a way of asking for a pause that doesn't drag a courtroom into the kitchen. The ring didn't belong to our household grammar. That night he was late with a text that accounted for the hour using words that belonged to other people. Donor dinner ran long. Old friend in town. Quick drink. I wanted to believe him the way you want to let a door stay a door, not a speech. I slipped the ring back into the pocket and waited for the part of me that prefers to fix things to decide between repair and diagnosis. He came home smelling like cedar and practiced laughter. I asked him something small, the kind of question that lets a room measure you without demanding blood. He kissed my neck in the place that knows both of us and said he was tired. When he slept, I watched his mouth unlearn the day. In the morning he left early for a museum call, coat over his arm, smile balanced on a glass he hadn't poured yet. I took the ring out again and learned it a second time. The inscription was a date that belonged to last fall. If it had been a joke, I would have laughed, badly and too loud. I work on signs, brush, enamel, a steady hand that convinces letters to be legible without begging. The first commission I had that mattered was an open for an old baker who didn't trust gold leaf. She wanted space around her word. She was right. When people ask for shine, I offer breath. It was muscle memory to take breath before doing anything that would teach me more than I was ready to learn. There was a hotel receipt in the pocket I knew he never uses. The place was the Standard on Ninth, the kind of hotel that pretends discretion is a currency. There was no room number on the slip. There was, because God admires coherence, a matchbook in the other pocket with a phone number written on the stem of a single remaining match. I called it because curiosity is a tool with a blade you can't see until the light hits it. A man answered and said my name like he was surprised I was an actual person. I knew his voice from openings and rooms that made a hobby of consensus. Adrian. He was taller than I remembered when I mapped him onto memory, dark hair that wanted discipline, a face that could be generous or cruel depending on the light. He didn't put me on hold when I said the ring existed. He said, "We should meet somewhere that doesn't lie. The roof at the Standard 7. The city kept itself together that evening while I tried not to fall apart in a way I'd have to clean. I brought water because that's how my body understands verbs it can trust. The elevator mirrored my face with no sympathy. The roof bar was full of people practicing being better looking than their troubles. Adrian stood by the glass with his hands in his pockets, which is how men signal they are ready to be sentenced. He didn't move when I reached him. We stood side by side and looked over the edge, which made sense. If we had faced each other too soon, it would have felt like applause. "You have his ring," he said. "Not mine, not Marcus." He named him like a country he hadn't decided to visit again. "I have someone's ring," I said. "It belongs to a date that wasn't ours." "It was mine," he said, and he took a breath that wanted to make a noise and decided to be useful instead. "Last October in a stupidly beautiful room." He watched me talk too much about an artist who loved accidents, and later he told me honesty turns rooms into mirrors. We were sober when we agreed to nothing meaningful and drunk when we practiced it. He said it without the courage of a confession or the performance of a villain. I hated him for removing my easy anger. He put a hand on the railing, and I wanted to take it off just to teach something a lesson. The air between us kept both of us from being idiots. Somewhere behind us, a woman laughed like she'd invented the word flirt, and a waiter existed bravely. "You could have thrown the ring into the river," I said. "And then I would have taught water to lie," he said. I tried to end it twice. I wrote long texts and small ones. He wrote back with a picture of your breakfast and a story about the museum's lighting grid. My reply was okay, because the line between dignity and laziness is a blur when you're tired. He turned his body a few degrees. Not toward me, not away, enough to let our shoulders know we had options. I could smell his cedar because it doesn't belong to a single brand, and my house smelled like it lately. He watched my mouth. I watched his throat. Remember, he had one. "Why invite me?" I asked. Instead of staging a tidy exit he could admire from the seat he's been hogging in his life. "Because I don't want to be a secret ingredient," he said. "Because I don't want to keep being a match fed to a room that pretends flame is an accident. Because you might hate me, and even that deserves light." He didn't say he wanted me to forgive him. He didn't say he wanted me. He let the last inch of space remain ours to decide about. When his fingers grazed my wrist, it was slow and it was honest. My body heated in the way bodies heat when they remember they're more than policies. I haven't yet met a morality that changes how skin responds to proximity. He read the answer in my jaw because he was not stupid. He took back the inch and was kind enough not to make it look like martyrdom. Marcus walked onto the roof with a face that could hang anything and a chest that had learned cedar, and he moved like a man who thinks speed will be mistaken for integrity. He saw both of us, and the distance, and the small betrayal of desire floating in air like a rumor you shouldn't repeat but do anyway. He didn't look at my hand because that would have been theater. He set his palms on the railing and leaned like a sermon. "Okay," he said, which is a syllable that can be both surrender and warm-up. "You forgot your ring," I said, and I put it on the railing between us like a coin we were not going to flip. He held the circle with a care that insulted and moved me. He didn't try it on the wrong finger. He put it in his pocket and didn't pretend it came from somewhere noble. His mouth formed the beginning of our best year and then failed to find a verb. "I cheated," he said. "I told myself it was weather and I could dry off without telling you about rain. I told myself the thing I love with you could contain a new thing without splitting. I am not good at math. I am working on it." "And him?" I asked without mercy. "He made me feel like early work," Marcus said. "Not better beginning. I mistook that for improvement." Adrian's jaw clenched in a way that didn't beg for sympathy. We stood in air that was about to pretend it was October even though it was. The city looked like an apology that learned to be attractive. A waiter put a glass of water on our ledge and did not ask if anyone wanted gin in it. I drank before I answered. "I am not going to leave," I said, and both of them flinched for the same different reason. "I am going to adjust." I stepped closer to Marcus and closer to Adrian without closing the space that deserved respect. I watched my own hand nearly touch the lapel of Marcus's coat and refuse. I watched Adrian's throat work and did not sympathize aloud. "We're going to do this without the good chairs," I said to Marcus. "You're going to sleep on the couch. We have never called a guest anything. You're going to tell me twice next week what this was, once in your clever language that makes curators nod, and once in the small words that won't impress anyone. You're going to tell him you're done without complimenting the season you manufactured together. And I'm going to see what my hands can hold without lying about my wrists." Marcus's eyes did something stupid and beautiful. I hated that I loved him enough to mark it. He nodded because sometimes that's all the body can do when it understands it has not earned a speech. Adrian, whose body had made 2 mistakes and 2 courtesies before dinner, stepped back and gave the city our triangle again. He reached for my shoulder and stopped, the kind of restraint more erotic than any promise. My skin remembered the inch he'd taken before and asked for it the way a throat asks for water in language the mind does not control. I let the one exist and didn't let it own the next hour. I think that counts for something unsexy and necessary. I'm going to leave, he said to both of us. Not as a scene, as information. He put his hand out to Marcus. Their handshake was exactly the length decency allows. He held his hand out to me. I didn't take it, not because I wanted to punish him, because touch is a contract and some signatures deserve daylight. He nodded as if he agreed with my choice before I made it and went away with his cedar and a posture that had learned something useful. Marcus and I walked home without touching. We kept the city honest between us. We waited for white crosswalk figures because everyone deserves seconds this week. In the apartment, the kettle chose drama again, and I hated it and was glad for something that didn't care about us. He slept on the not-guest couch and didn't make a show of blankets. In the morning he made tea, set both cups down, and left the kitchen like he knew the word room had changed and needed time to say it without breaking. The conversations we had were uglier than my skills and cleaner than my fear. He explained how he talked about me when he shouldn't have. He admitted he liked being 2 men because it made the one at home feel humble without work. He said he wanted to be 1 man with me, and that it might require replacing bolts he thought were welded. I told him he wasn't a door. I told him I could keep the frame if we stopped pretending shine was structure. We did not kiss other people. We did not kiss each other until I told him to. When I finally did, it was lazy and precise, the way I paint the thin line inside an O when no one else will ever know how hard it is. His mouth apologized without being pathetic. My mouth accepted without offering sainthood. I returned the ring to the hotel in an envelope that didn't explain. The clerk thanked me with an expression like a small country exchanging diplomats without learning anyone's language. I cut leather and glued soles and tied knots that generations tell each other about without affection. I breathed on the word open and let it dry the way you let oil cure. I walked to the roof of the Standard one afternoon when it pretended to be empty. The sky told a story about mercy and the kind of person I'd be if you asked nicely. I didn't answer. I don't owe the weather an essay. If another piece of evidence appears at my door that looks like a formality, I will bring water. I will sit in a chair where the exit is obvious and not consider that cowardice. I will let desire be a visitor, not a judge. I will tell the truth without making it a genre. When I choose to touch or not, it will be because my hands can hold the next day, not because I needed to win the last one. If that looks like choosing repair over finale, it is because that is what I am for.